well, as people continue to join, we'll go ahead and get started for today's conversation. So thank you, everybody, for being here and for joining us. It's so lovely to see all of you, at least your names for those who don't have their cameras on. Welcome. My name is Becky Megas, she, her pronouns, and I am the founder and chief care connector for Women in Sustainability. For those who are new, Women in Sustainability is a social and environmental justice nonprofit that is dedicated to caring for the people who care for the planet through our 4 pillars of community, advocacy, resources, and education to create a sustainable and equitable future and to elevate women and marginalized voices in environment, climate, and sustainability. Awesome. Well, I am so excited to introduce my friend Anna. It's been about a year at least now that we met.
Yes. It feels like forever. We were destined to be together.
We were, a very truth. We had an opportunity to meet. Anna came to one of the Women in Sustainability meetings, and just, yeah, as she said, we kind of just hit it off. And we've had many conversations about this topic. And every time we talk about it, she just makes me excited. And I never thought I'd be excited about talking about human waste. But here we are today to talk about biosolids. So Anna is a dedicated corporate planeteer with a mission to create a more connected and sustainable world. Anna has taken the plunge into the heart of sustainable solutions. You will often catch her passionately discussing unconventional topics like poop and an often overlooked waste, how often overlooked waste has a power to transform and heal our planet. Her journey in wastewater operations has fortified her belief that there is a treasure in the flush. Understanding the impact of something every human regularly evacuates, and hopefully quite regularly, is a crucial mission that Anna proudly embraces. With unfiltered enthusiasm, please join her as we discuss turning waste into worth, complete with a healthy pile of many to come poo puns. So please help me welcome my dear friend, Anna.
Thank you. And welcome to the shit show. Can I say that? I did. I'm sorry. Speaking of unfiltered, thank you so much, Becky, for having me do this. It is, like she said, it's one of my favorite topics. And I'm not necessarily an expert on the topic, but I am an expert on being very enthusiastic about this topic. So thank you. And thanks for allowing me to be here and share this time and space with you. Again, my name is Anna Howell. My full name is Annalisa. It's spelled a little bit funny because it's Norwegian, she, her pronouns. I do go by Anna, mostly because nobody can ever pronounce the full name correctly. I am thrilled to share this time with you to discuss a topic that I am extremely passionate about. Your number 2 is my number 1. We say that a lot in the wastewater industry. So, and like Becky said, please trust that the next 30 minutes or so will be obnoxiously littered with poo puns. It'll be a guess. All right. I'm not sure that, okay, here we go. A brief overview of what we'll chat about today. This is mostly accountability for me, as I tend to, again, get a little unfiltered and off the cuff. So I'll give you a little bit of a background into who I am and what I do, and then we'll talk about what biosolids are. I don't think it's a really common term unless you're in the industry. So we'll do sort of a lot of education surrounding it. Knowledge is power. And then we'll talk about why the management of such is so important to the health and longevity of our planet and of ourselves. And again, really the purpose of this entire presentation is knowledge, right? Knowledge is power. It's a pretty stinky stigma that exists surrounding this topic, and we can remove that just through education and outreach. So a little bit about me. I am an athlete by pure luck and choice, a mathematician by education. This is a lovely picture of me and my dear friend doing the triple bypass. I thought it was a little nicer to look at rather than me crunching numbers or just sitting in a pile of poo while I talk about myself and where I came from. So in school and sort of my journey into this wastewater industry, when I was in college, an advisor told me that I had to pick a minor to graduate. I was a math major and I needed to pick a minor. And most math majors chose some flavor of computer science because they were so closely related and made the most sense. I was not interested in this snooze fest. Apologies to anyone who is into computer science. I think it's great, but it was just as you can imagine, I don't fit really well behind a computer. I'm a little too excited, and the computer doesn't talk back to me enough. So, and fate kind of took over in that educational process. I remember witnessing all of these sort of cool looking people going up to the second level of the sciences building. And so one day I followed, and it was the most magical place that they call earth sciences. And I caught a glimpse of calculus on one of the whiteboards in a classroom. And I just went into the classroom and sat down, and it was all about water studies, and I was hooked. It was truly magical. And so I changed my minor, and I was like, I'm that person. I'm earth sciences, environmental science, and I focused on water studies specifically. And I would say that that's probably responsible for me getting to graduate. I was on a bit of a 15-year plan due to a lot of different circumstances, but it excited me. I was so excited about it. So part of that curriculum included wastewater studies. As such, we had an opportunity to tour a wastewater treatment facility. And there was either a lead operator or maybe a lab supervisor that gave myself, and I think there were only 3 other students at the time that decided that that would be a fun way to spend their Saturday. And he was so incredibly enthusiastic about every step of this process, and I'm sure he inspired my poo puns, but it left an enormous imprint on me, and I knew I wanted to be in this industry, and so I did. So I started as an operator, and in Fort Lupton, actually, I was doing water and wastewater treatment up in Fort Lupton, north of Denver, northeast of Denver, I suppose, ish. Yeah, northeast. And quickly made my way into a corporate role in which I got to lead the sustainability program for over 200 of our projects. It was a dream, truly. So my responsibilities within that included things like helping projects establish a sustainability goal for their facility for the year. These goals included impact areas like fuel and chemical savings and energy savings and water reuse, and my personal favorite, biosolids. So to me, it was the most exciting piece of wastewater treatment because it was so circular and exciting, and just it excited me. And I think part of that excitement was because it was a little bit of a stigma, and I like to go against the grain a little bit. So I like being that person. So it is more fondly, and we're kind of going through this transformation within that wastewater industry, where instead of calling it wastewater treatment, we're transforming it into what we call water resource recovery, because that's really what's happening, is we are recovering these resources from that treatment. So, and on that note, to understand what this whole resource recovery means, I want to take you kind of through the basics of the treatment process. In other words, like what happens after you flush. This is the most elementary depiction of wastewater treatment that you could come by, but I think it really is good for this purpose and for education. So what happens when you flush a toilet? There are enormous pipes that carry it to a wastewater treatment facility. If you live in Denver, you'll notice that we are replacing an immense amount of pipes all throughout the city because it's failing infrastructure. But that gives you kind of an idea of how big these pipes are that exist, and how much power there is behind that, and how necessary this is to our survival on this planet and just like basic function. So these pipes take water to the treatment center. So there's just a whole bunch of mess, a bunch of poo, a bunch of garbage, a bunch of nastiness, and liquid. And it all goes through these pipes and stops in this, what we call the screening stage. And that kind of takes out the bigger things, right? Like, I mean, this is not a glamorous topic. So you'll find a lot of just like flushable wipes, tampons, other kind of gross things that shouldn't be flushed, that just, they get caught here and sort of filtered out. And then the rest of this kind of nastiness gets treated through. There are several different treatment stages, but the whole idea of wastewater treatment is that you're trying to separate solid from liquid, and you're trying to disinfect each of these equally, right? So once we get through the disinfection process of the liquid, that liquid most often returns to the environment, and it returns to the environment a lot cleaner than what it's actually going into. So a lot of rivers and streams. So you'll notice Wastewater treatment facilities are right near some sort of effluent into like river. So Fort Lupton, it was the Platte River. That facility is right there because after treatment, once that water is clean and ready to be returned to the environment, it does in fact go to the environment. Now there's this other piece that is the solids process, and that's like my favorite part. It's the only, and here's something that once I got into this wastewater industry, like everyone kind of thinks it's disgusting, right? And that it smells terrible. It really doesn't. There's like I've grown this fondness for for the like earthiness of it. The nastiest part of this treatment process is that screening stage. Once you start disinfecting and treating it, it becomes, it has this like earthy beautifulness to it. And I love it. So the solid kind of goes through this process of settling and disinfection, and then kind of getting it back like flocculating so we can get it to sort of this cakiness that we can continue to disinfect. And then once it gets into this, what we call cake, depending on how dry it is and depending on how well it has been disinfected, that's kind of this whole world of biosolids. So that's that final treatment. So you've got a solid, the final solid portion of wastewater treatment is biosolids. The final liquid portion of wastewater treatment gets returned to the environment. So that's sort of the background on biosolids. So what are biosolids? Well, the biosolids are this solid organic matter that is a product of wastewater treatment. So this could be industrial, residential, commercial. And as you might imagine, this product is incredibly nutrient dense. Based on the treatment, biosolids are classified into 3 groups. This is, sorry, I changed it and I didn't explain where this comes from. So this is a really cool facility in Fayetteville. Yes, this is in Fayetteville. And I loved this sign. I just loved this picture. This was a site visit. And they have a beautiful biosolids management program, but this, all of these fields, if you kind of, I have some other pictures strewn about within this presentation, but it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. So the way that biosolids, once it's disinfected, they're classified. So we have a class A, class B, and then a completely unclassified. Unclassified means it goes to the landfill. Class B is, you will find a lot of land application with restriction, and class A, which is like the Mecca, can be returned to the environment with less restriction, turned into fertilizer, really kind of, again, turned into this sort of circular and cyclical process. So that's kind of just the basic background of biosolids, right? So as we're going through this, here's kind of this challenge within biosolids and why we are trying to think of the most sustainable solutions. We hopefully will poop forever, every day, forever. And so there will always be this waste that we have to do something with, right? We have a growing population. We all know that this is an issue. And so with that population and with us using the restroom all the time, it's going to increase that wastewater, and it's going to increase the wastewater treatment. So solutions are necessary and vital. We have a lot of disposal challenges recently. I talked a little bit about how a lot of biosolids go directly to landfill. There are future restrictions that will exist on landfill. For example, California in 2025 is banning all biosolids from landfill. So now we have an enormous amount of crap that we have no idea what to do with. So now we have to think outside of the box. Now we have to think about, okay, if we can't dump it in the landfill and it doesn't make sense to incinerate it, how can we use this for good? How can we invest in it so that we can return it back to the environment so that it heals our planet? How can we avoid ocean dumping? There's going to be, you might have heard of this 4-letter word called PFAS. This is becoming an issue in water and wastewater in our entire world. So these are some of the challenges that we're dealing with today. And the solution has to be sustainability. The solution to everything has to be sustainability, right? If you didn't believe that, you would not be hanging out here today. Thank you, Becky. So I kind of want to take you through a little bit of sort of like kind of the sustainable solutions that I have been a part of that have excited me, and give you a picture of what this looks like and what it smells like. Just kidding. I wish I could share with you what it smells like because it's delightful. It's just like so earthy and wonderful. And I understand that sounds ridiculous coming out of my mouth, but trust me, I wouldn't lie to you, at least not to your face. Just kidding. Okay, so here is another facility in I believe this is in Oklahoma. These are what we call drying beds. Okay, so we have once the liquid and solids are separated, drying disinfects it even more, as you might imagine, right? And when you have an enormous load of biosolids in a truck to take to the landfill, a lot of what you're paying for to transport to the landfill is all about weight. And the heaviest piece of biosolids is water, is liquid. So there's always this push to make it drier so that we can transport it easier, so that we can disinfect it more. And this is kind of what you're looking at here, is you spread this out evenly and use the energy of the sun to dry it out. Like, and as you might imagine, this is geographically, you can't do this in some geographies, right? Especially with an enormous amount of humidity, it's not going to dry well. Here in Colorado, it would dry beautifully. But so this is exciting. This is an exciting piece of what I do, these drying beds. As this is drying too, you have to till it as well. For anybody who composts, you know that if you don't move it around, it will cause an explosion. This is no different. There's a lot of energy in this, and so we have to put a lot of energy into it to make it the most useful. This is also in Fayetteville. So this is another way in which we dry biosolids, in which we put it into a greenhouse. And we, again, you're tilling this over time. And a big piece of this is air quality, right? You're capturing a lot of emissions that sort of steam off of this. And so there's this extra piece of biosolids about air quality and understanding what you're emitting into this atmosphere. But to me, this is so beautiful. This is like love and life and nutrients and like possibility. This is like a gold mine, in my opinion. This does not smell good. I will be honest about that. But it's exciting nonetheless. This is what it looks like if you have a product in which you can land apply. This is kind of what it looks like to land apply in some situations. So an enormous truck literally dumps a huge, like, look at the color of that. Is that not the sexiest thing? So it dumps into this field, and then you have farmers and people basically just scoop and spread and create goodness. And it is just the most beautiful thing you've ever witnessed. I'm maybe a little bit biased, but it really is just so beautiful. And the reason I mention that color is because I think, especially for those of us who are in Colorado, that color of soil doesn't exist very often around here, unless it's, no, it doesn't exist around here. So to see something like that returned back to the environment, to me, that's like such a picture of healing, right? Like, that's just gorgeous to me. So that's just kind of an idea of what it looks like for kind of a picture of land application. This is a cool project that I was a part of, that is a little bit of the future of biosolids that is exciting. So this is a greenhouse, a small like pilot greenhouse that was erected in California, and it exists on a facility in which so they're instead of having to haul their biosolids away, which costs an enormous amount of money, What if we had something, some sort of greenhouse or something that existed within our facility that we can just dry it ourselves, and we can figure out a way to reuse that within our communities? Can we sell it to farmers? Can we give it to farmers? Can we figure out a way to just communicate better to the community that this is, we are doing this to help each other, to help our farmers, to help our crop yield, all of this. So anyway, so this was an exciting pilot that I was a piece of. There is on the floor of, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so this is, so what happens after the treatment process at this facility, these loads of biosolids get dumped into here, okay? I think the first picture of my introduction was like me in a tractor. This is what I was doing. You dump a bunch of biosolids in here, and there's like an 8-inch layer of thickness, and you till it once a day. And again, what that does is it keeps things lively, it keeps things from blowing up, and it keeps things fragrant, and it keeps it drying. And it really is just a beautiful process. The drying process, I think, for this to get optimal sort of what, like, liquid removal, I guess is a nice way to put it. I think with this was 3 weeks. So you're tilling it once a day, then you're removing it, and then bringing in more goodness. So the idea and the hope is that we could do this on a grander scale everywhere to sort of be these like self-sustainable and self-sufficient machines within the industry and within the community of yeah, just of like keeping this in a cycle of returning it to our communities, and not worrying about like landfill overload, not worrying about restrictions, not worrying about pollution, making this accessible to us all. Underneath that greenhouse is what's called PEX tubing. PEX tubing heats the ground. And so the idea of this was that in the winter, when there's a risk of that freezing, when there's a risk of that soil freezing, that sort of heats it. Also, when it's enclosed in this greenhouse, you have that sort of greenhouse effect in which it heats it even more and keeps it livened. So
sorry about that.
That's exciting. So this is, and on a grander scale, this is a facility. So that's a small pilot program that exists. And this is an enormous, like 2-acre facility that exists in Florida, in which what they're doing here is that small process on a very large scale. They're pasteurizing, they're pelletizing, they're selling this fertilizer, and it is creating this like just incredible ecosystem healing. It is awesome, and it's exciting, and I love it. All right, so the environmental benefits of land application, these are just a few that I thought of within the first 5 seconds in my head. The environmental benefits of land application for biosolids, it's innumerous, but it really does improve the soil structure. Like we just saw in those previous pictures, that black soil is so sexy. If you don't agree with me, we can talk about it later, but you're wrong. There is a beautiful enhanced nutrient content that exists in there. That kind of soil, imagine what kind of crops come from that soil. It really is beautiful. And you can see pictures of what that kind of soil produces, like crops, what kind of, like even on a small scale garden that you might have in your backyard. Water pollution reduction, right? Landfill space. California is starting the ban. It's going to exist everywhere, right? Our landfills are completely overloaded. We have an enormous waste issue in this country and in this world, and we've got to figure out solutions, sustainable solutions. And this has got to be at the forefront. This is exciting stuff, right? We can figure out a way to make our houses more waste-free, but what comes out of our body, I don't know that we can control that as much, right? So let's figure out a way to use it for the best. Like I said, that replacing that soil, improving the health of our soil, improving our ecosystem, immense amount of benefit that come from that. And greenhouse gas reduction. I think that just kind of goes without saying that, like the whole idea of compost, the amount of greenhouse gas reduction that you get just from composting is significant. I think, Becky, I think you are an expert on this subject matter. And so that's kind of in a nutshell, what sort of my excitement over biosolids is. What my call to action for you all is to spread the good word of the turd, especially in this month of October when you got spooky dookies. I have to get in all my puns at the last second. I had them off to the side and I forgot to use them, so they're all coming at you. But really and truly, to spread the good word. So my excitement for this topic came from my excitement from somebody else, and that's how it's going to keep on going. Is to feed off of the enthusiasm of others. This is going to be a lifelong process. Sustainability is a lifelong game, and that's the point of it, right? Like, how do we figure out how to live in this world that is kind to our planet, that's kind to each other, and that's survivable? That's never going to go away, right? That's just it. It's never going to go away. So learning how to be better with those sustainable solutions, learning more about them, removing those stigmas, talking about poo. We all do it. Just talk about it. You don't have to be crass. There's a lot of good jokes surrounding this topic. So a couple of resources that I do want to share, because I think it's a fun topic to talk about, and I have a lot of people with whom I admire greatly within this world. One such person is kind of a hero of mine. Mele Lono Batura is the director of sustainable biosolids for WEF, which is a Water Environment Federation, which is a nonprofit organization for all water quality people. This is tens and thousands of people that exist globally. And so she directs sustainable biosolids, and she is an incredible resource. She's done several podcasts. She's an incredible speaker. She's hilarious. She loves poo puns, I think, more than myself, which is really difficult to do. So these are two podcasts which she is a part of. Words on Water in general is a great podcast on anything that has to do with water. It's really, really engaging. She is in episode number 203, talking about basically her, the year of poo and getting everyone to talk about it. And that's where I got fun fecal facts from. And also part of what was called Sustainably Geeky, there was an episode called Poop Happens, where they talk a lot about PFAS and biosolids, and the future of that. And again, all of this, the theme of this is really removing the stigma from it. There's a really good book out there called The Other Dark Matter. Gosh, these puns are so great that exist in this world. It tickles me and delights me. This is by Lena Zeldovich. She is a trip. She's an excellent writer. She spent years researching this topic, but it's basically the history of poo and the history of that whole wastewater treatment, and how are we going to turn that into a way in which we can make money and heal this planet. And it is a crazy cool read. I saw her present once. She knitted herself this robe that just has like a bunch of poop emojis and all this other stuff on it. I mean, it is like the best world. And then there's a website called Year of Poo. This is also, again, by Mele Lono Batura. And again, it's just education surrounding all of this, fecal facts, super classy poo puns. But this is, I mean, the solution is education. The solution to everything is education. And I hope that really and truly that's really the purpose of what I wanted to talk about today. Like I said, this is something I'm really just I will learn about forever because it excites me that much. And I hope it does the same for you. It really is an exciting topic, and it's exciting to see how what we do every day, hopefully a couple times a day, can be responsible for healing this planet and healing ourselves. That's all I've got. That's me and Winston saying thank you.
I love Winston. I love you and your excitement around this topic. It makes it so much fun. I know Randy's got a question, but real fast, you kind of talk about PFAS a little bit. And I know this is still kind of new, and I would attempt to pronounce the actual real pronunciation for everybody, but I'm not going to try to go there.
Let's see if I get, what is it? Perfluoroalkyl something. something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
So basically plastics, right? Like
yeah.
chemicals that are in our bodies.
So PFAS, if there is anything that is waterproof, there's PFAS in it. So anything that slips or slides off of stuff, so Teflon, anything waterproof. We started to really notice it in fire fire retardant, right? So there's this thing that exists that's called the forever chemical. It's PFAS, and what it has done is kind of gotten into our soil and into our water, and we're still learning a lot about it, but we're learning a lot about it at a really high rate. As you can imagine, this gets a little sticky in this 21st century in which we're on information overload. But it's something to be aware of, and it's something that we test for. We're talking about parts, like we're talking about stuff that exists in parts per trillion. So it's on that kind of level, but it's something that's loud enough to cause concern. The future of biosolids in this light is figuring out a way in which how do we remove a forever chemical from these biosolids? Well, the answer to this is an immense amount of heat, that exists in technology that called gasification, and which it turns into under an enormous amount of pressure, an enormous amount of heat, it turns into what's called char. So like if you've grilled anything under charcoal, it gets kind of that charry sort of whateverness, and that's sort of the product of what comes from what we call gasification of such. And that gasification comes from a lot of testing and a lot of knowledge and understanding the effects of such. PFAS is something that nobody knows everything about, right? But we're talking about it, and and I think talking about it removes the fear of it. I don't know if that answered your question, Becky. I just kind of went off the cuff there.
That's perfect. That's what I wanted you to do. Cause I think because you're right. Like, right. I think it's still very new. It's really, I mean, within the last, year to 2 years that we really are starting to hear more and more about PFAS and it being in our bodies and where it's coming from. And I think your point of this is still very new, but continue to keep an eye out and understand that this is a very serious problem in many different ways for our environment, not just in the human body, but lots of ways. Our water, like our water streams and everything. So Randy, do you want to come off mute and ask your question? Can't hear you, Randy. Doesn't look like your microphone is on. So I don't know if you want to drop your question into chat, and then we'll ask Brittany's question and come back to you. All right. So Brittany asked, when would one use the greenhouse for drying? It seems counterintuitive because greenhouses are pretty humid. Would this be for places with colder temperatures and or precipitation?
That's a great question. So yeah, I would say colder temperatures. The purpose of greenhouse drying is odor. I think a significant piece of that is odor control, right? So when you are drying these biosolids, you're still emitting a pretty good amount of odor. And so what happens within those at the end of a lot of these greenhouses is what we call odor scrubbing. And so we capture what's coming off of that, because if you get any sort of complaint about odor at a wastewater treatment facility, it is a big no-no, and it sucks. And it's always a concern, right? There's always going to be a concern about odor with wastewater. So the idea of having a greenhouse is we capture that while drying it, we capture that odor, scrub it, remove it back into the environment at a very safe level, while continuing to dry this. Colder temps, yeah, like I think also, yeah, I think that's all as Forrest Gump said it, that's all I have to say about that. I think that's kind of the shortest answer. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, thank you for that question. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to either raise your hand or drop your questions in the chat. And you kind of talk about, yes, we need to talk about this topic, right? But it is a very taboo topic. It is not one that you're just like in the middle of a conversation, like, hey, let's talk about, your waste, your human waste. I Before some people came in, I was talking about I went at a friend's house this weekend, noticed that they had a bidet, and I made a comment, and you could tell that the shift in the conversation, right? Like for me, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. You have a bidet, and I bring it up in the middle of a party. Whereas people are like, why are you talking about a bidet in the middle of a party? I'm also fine with being weird and awkward. But with that said, how do we get past that stigma? What can we do to try to bring up this topic that is an unconventional topic when you are talking to people? And how can we engage people in that conversation?
That's a great question. I think honestly, just the whole idea of continuing to talk about it removes so much of the stigma, right? It's this unmentionable. So just start mentioning it. Understand what that treatment process is and how exciting that is. And also like how many jobs that provides for people. This is like a really beautiful trades industry. And on that note, there are not a lot of women in this industry. And it is a great job. It is a great job. And so understanding that treatment process, talking about it, education and mentioning it, I think are vital to that. I glanced at a question from Randy about energy. There's an immense amount of energy, yes. And that's, now you're talking about the name of the game of that would be like biogas capture, right? There's a lot of, it's not cheap, right? And we're all trying to figure that out. We've been doing things the same way for so long. And that's not just in the wastewater industry, that's everywhere. So we're just trying to figure out how to do it better. And so the whole, like, wastewater treatment in and of itself is one of the most environmental things we do, right? Like just being an operator is basically just being an environmentalist. So now we're just like, how can we do it better? We weren't worried about energy before. We weren't worried about greenhouse gas emissions before because it felt like we didn't have to worry about it. So to your point, I love hearing things like that. Like, wow, it seems like there's a lot of energy in that. Yes, absolutely, 100%. Let's figure out a way to capture that and use it better. And then we get to be at the forefront of those solutions.
Yeah, there's like, I love that idea of like, we've been doing things so long. It's the same thing in the waste world, right? Like we've been doing waste for so long that everything just has to be reinvented, but that change also doesn't come tomorrow. And it's this long process you have to figure out. And as you noted earlier, there's more and more people living in this country and in this world. And so how do we adapt to a growing population with systems that are very antiquated?
Yeah.
So I love that. When you think about the future of sustainability, looking into your crystal ball, what do you kind of see for the future? What do you think that crystal ball reveals to you?
I dream of a world in which this whole system is closed and self-sustaining, returning water back to its environment, returning waste back to soil, actually just removing the whole idea of the term waste in general. And I think we're kind of doing that in this industry of trying not to call it wastewater, calling it water resource recovery. There's very little to be wasted in this. And so I dream of a world in which we don't talk about it as wastewater, and that everything is a recovery system. Everything is a resource recovery system. And then we get excited about that. I think a lot of times we get stuck in this, like I said before, like this is what we've always done. This is the way we've always done it. I'm excited about a world in which we bring in new ideas that are off the wall, and we get to try things in a safe space and with an immense amount of courage, and that courage is rewarded. And it starts at this basic level of something that will exist forever. Your bowels are not going to go away. They may be inconvenient at times, but this is going to be an everyday thing.
Fascinating. It's so besides talking with people about it, do you know, is there anything happening at the legislative level as well? Is it something that we can talk to politicians about? Obviously, California is changing a lot of their laws and regulations. And what does that look like, and how we can engage in actually overhauling a system here?
I don't know, to be quite frank. I'm not sure. I know that California is not going to be the last state. I think this is happening in Maine as well. It's going to keep on happening. So I think maybe the call to action here and what can we do is figure out what's happening in California and get ahead of it, and figure out the solutions before we're kind of stuck with this. Oh, I didn't think it would happen to us, but now we don't know what we're doing. So, but legislatively, I don't know, Becky. That's a great question.
You hear that, Anne? There's some room for some legislation coming up. EcoCycle they do a lot of our policy and passing of legislation when it comes to waste. And so maybe that's something we work on in the near future, of also bringing that up, because right, like, now that we're aware, you can't be unaware. And how can we start to even bring that conversation up? And yeah, I think there could be some fun. Thumbs up. I love it. I love it. Any other questions? Does anybody else have any other questions for Anna?
I would say, just quickly on that note, I would also say, understand that everything that we put into our bodies, as far as what comes, like, if you want to talk about waste, what comes out of that, the more garbage that we put into our bodies, the more garbage is going to come out, the more treatment that's going to cost, right? And the more chemicals that's going to require to treat. So really, on a basic level, just be good to yourselves, and whatever, let it be more organic what comes out of you.
Yeah, I think that is so important. And that goes to the point of how everything is interconnected, right? Like, everything is connected that we do, our health and what we eat, and that affects the environment overall. Like, all of those pieces start to add up to the piece of the puzzle of how we can start to really do better for the environment at the end of the day. So I love that point. Just eat healthy.
Yeah.
Come on, it's so easy.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, if there's no other questions, I think that was all I had, but thank you so much, my dear friend. I am trying to get Anna to do a Instagram account, so we will let you know if she gets that up and running. Maybe you can help me convince her, because I think that could be fun to just have an Instagram account full of like poo puns. But thank you so much for being here. We are going to plant 3 trees in your name through our partnership with One Tree Planted. So you'll receive a certificate from us with your trees, and highly, yeah. See, Randy said she'd follow it. See, I'm
Thanks,
getting
Randy.
the troops.
I know you won't give up on this.
Nope. You should have never told me.
No.
But definitely connect with Anna. She's always around when she is in town at our events. She is, once you get started on the puns, they don't stop, and you just end up in a ball of laughter. So highly recommend reaching out and having conversations, and talk to your friends, and live on all the poo puns.
Yes.
I love it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Anna, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Stay warm this weekend. It's going to be cold.